Today we're live in the studio for part 1 of my 4-hour wedding photography workshop.
Taylor Jackson.
Shooting 67 weddings last year.
Taylor Jackson, welcome.
So Taylor, you are well known in this community. You're an amazing photographer.
Basically, how this workshop came about is when we hit a certain Patreon threshold, I came up with the idea that I wanted to do a live workshop up here in our studio, and I wanted to invite as many people as I possibly could. But basically life happened, things got busy, and then I rescheduled it into almost like a tour where we were going to go to LA and San Francisco and a bunch of other different places, and we were going to run this 4-hour workshop kind of everywhere. But again, life got in the way, specifically the Nikon project that we're doing that's going to be coming out just in a couple of days now. We kind of got a little bit lost in that, and that took over a lot of time. So what I'm doing is I'm putting half of the workshop up here on YouTube live as it happens, and then the business section is going to be on Patreon. So I guess the core pieces that I kind of promised in the original workshop are all going to be on Patreon, and it closes out with a huge section on Facebook ads and Instagram ads and kind of how to change everything. 7 YouTube videos. There's 7 things that we're going to go through today. I'm going to start a little bit with my story since I haven't really officially told my story too much. We're going to go through lenses, tips for beginners, how to actually make money in photography, not necessarily just wedding photography, but kind of switching it up and working with whatever is available for work at the certain time of the year, wherever you live. My number 1 tip that I have for wedding photography, easy posing and tips to book more weddings. And then we're going to go into the Patreon section, which is basically it's going to start with how to get 10,000 followers on Instagram, which is going to be hopefully maybe your first 10K. If you already have that achievement unlocked, you're free to use all these tactics and hopefully gain even more traction. How to get published and why it's actually important to get published. I guess the big misunderstanding for me specifically is that when I was trying to get published in the very beginning, it was a little bit challenging and I didn't know why I was doing it. And then I quickly realized the actual reason that you want to get published, and it's not to immediately book weddings. It's a different reason. We're going to go through pricing, although there is a full pricing course that is coming out the month of February, or that just came out on Patreon as well. Hybrid coverage. There was a hybrid coverage course that came out in January. We're going to go through kind of the Cole's notes of it and how to easily implement it and get it running in your business quickly, making more money, becoming a preferred vendor, and the things that I've learned specifically over this year, and Instagram and Facebook ads, as I spoke to at the beginning of this. All right. So Tim is here. He is going to be answering, or he's going to be collecting some questions. So if you have any questions specifically for kind of the section of the video that we're talking about, feel free to plug them in. If you have anything that would just be, that you believe would be just a general helpful answer, that's something that you'd like to hear that you think other people could also like to hear, feel free to plug that in as well, and we will get to that. All right, how I became a wedding photographer. So my story goes back to, I'm going to say I was 14, 15, and I was doing a lot of skateboard, snowboard. Pretty much I was out skateboarding, snowboarding all the time, and also playing in bands, like really bad Blink-182 cover bands. And I started to take a lot of photos. I had this old, I don't even know if anyone would remember this camera anymore. It's a longer camera, and the film is kind of this long. I'll see if I can even find a photo. Or like, Tim, do you even know what it's called? Anyways, it's like this little cartridge you plug in the back of your camera, and it was weird, and you kind of slide it to go to the next frame. So I used one of those cameras and shot a lot of just kind of skateboard stuff around my local area, and it was all really terrible, but we had a lot of fun doing it, and it was cool to see frozen moments captured and displayed. It was print at the time, or I guess film at the time. So I would go into the grocery store and I'd get my prints back and it'd be like, oh, cool, like that looks really good. That's a really good angle. And I became a little bit obsessed with not necessarily getting my work into a magazine, but trying to emulate the photos that I was seeing in magazines. And with such limited gear, it was a little bit of a challenge. I really aspired hard to get that first fisheye lens, the first like super wide angle lens, the first great lens, I guess, that I had a 50, which I 100% recommend that should be the first lens that you really get for if you just got a digital SLR. But beyond that, all I had was a kit lens, a 50, and I had nothing to get those super wide angles, and I was shooting on a crop body, so I couldn't get the shots that I was seeing in a magazine. So I really aspired to that, and I realized that it was very expensive to get to that level. So what I did was I bought a fisheye adapter, and I put it on my camera, and the photos, they're really not that great, so I'm not gonna show any. And also print your work, because one of the issues was that I guess I didn't really value my early work enough to keep it around. So I wish so badly that I had a full collection of these images back from when I was a kid. My parents might have some. I'll see if I can dig some up. But for today, my journey begins in concert photography. So skateboard, snowboard friends turned into music friends in high school, specifically people started actually getting kind of good at what they did. And I wasn't a great musician. I enjoyed playing, but I was definitely not any sort of all-star musician that if I was out there, I didn't really do anything stage presence wise. I'm quiet, introverted. I couldn't really get into the mindset of that rock star persona. So basically what I did was I just followed around my friends and just started taking photos of them. So this is my buddy Yashka. He was one of the groomsmen at our wedding, and his wedding is actually coming up next year. And this is from like a little crappy club up here. And while it looks impressive, or kind of looks impressive, I guess, it's my fisheye adapter. While it looks kind of cool, there was really nobody at the show at that time. So the thing that I kind of enjoyed doing was making my friends look like rock stars, even if they were performing to like 10 or 15 people. I started that portfolio, and as I'll kind of talk about over this entire workshop, really everything is a building process, and everything builds upon itself. And even if it doesn't seem like it is, that you'll look back 10 years from now and you'll be like, okay, that was like a key moment. I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I did that this thing unlocked this and that unlocked that. And that's what led me to where my career is today. So basically shooting that portfolio, getting that portfolio up and running, allowed me to go and shoot my first touring band. This is a band called Static Lullaby. If you're familiar with MySpace and Screamo music, they were one of the key Screamo bands at the time. And this is them playing like a little crappy club for 25, 30 people in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. It's called The Shadow. If you're local of Guelph, you'll probably be familiar with it. It's a terrible place. Probably don't go there. Don't go there to eat, for sure. But a lot of good bands came through there somehow. I don't know who their booking agent was, but they were getting everything, like everything that came to Toronto would somehow come here. We're about an hour west of Toronto over here. So I was able to at least find my way into a lot of spaces and get pretty close to a lot of really, really good and talented bands and take photos of them, which in turn kind of gave me a little bit of, I guess, leverage to use those photos to get paid at local shows or to get paid for doing press photos along the way. And that's kind of how that began. And then I linked up with a music magazine in Toronto, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get access to even better shows. So basically at the time, I was shooting skateboard, snowboard stuff. This is kind of everything that I was doing. I like it. It's fun. I had a good time doing it. And I would do it again. I guess that's how you know when you're actually doing something that's valuable to you, is that I would go and shoot this stuff for free right now. And it's still kind of a dream of mine to get up on those big mountains and shoot like that Travis Rice style crazy stuff, not to snowboard in it, but to actually just document it and go along for the ride. So all of that kind of parlayed into music. And then I started getting bigger gigs. So this is Dallas Green recording the Save Your Scissors video in, 2005. So that was kind of one of the first big things that I got invited to, and I was able to go and shoot stills, and I'm like clearly in the shot. His cameraman is pointed kind of right at me. I'm sure I'm out of focus in that video. But it was cool to be there and to be part of Dallas Green's kind of rollout career. Basically what was happening here, there was a band called Alexa on Fire. They were pretty much the biggest band, I would say, at the time to come out of Toronto. They were blowing up. Dallas Green is the happy, pretty voice of the band. That there's a screamer guy, and there is Dallas Green who sings nicely. He did an acoustic series or acoustic show, I guess, and then that spiraled into an acoustic album, and then that's what he does. That's kind of his career now, which is kind of cool. And we were there at the very beginning just to capture his first music video. And because of everything that I did, just shooting my friends and leapfrogging and figuring out that I can shoot for this music magazine, and then using that to get leverage to get into places like this, eventually got me invited. So that's all fine and great. Unfortunately, music photography in general, and there's a lot of issues, I guess, in photography when you're just not making money doing it, and you're spending your time and effort, and you're really spinning your wheels, and it's really, really challenging overall to just like to be able to get money for what you're doing, that you're putting the time in, you're putting the edit hours in, you're doing all the work, but you're just not making any money. So I guess my closet was full of free t-shirts that I got from shooting all these bands. And kind of what I started doing was just getting my friends, like, I don't know, like anyone that I could, anyone that was in the music scene, like Jordan and Laura here, to go out for a walk. And it would be like, I'll shoot photos of you guys like doing whatever it is, for you to be okay with me going out and taking couples photos of you. Cause I don't know, we're like all like 19, 20 at the time. Nobody really wants to go out and do a couples session. It's like, it's super weird. So I was able to just convince my friends, fortunately, to go and do that. And from there began weddings. So I got into, I guess, weddings through music. So that means that a lot of my first weddings, specifically my favorite first weddings, were all music based, which means that like somebody was in a band, or somebody knew me from the music scene or whatever it might be. Up here, my buddy Jordan, or Justin, sorry, and Ben Knechtel. And Ben Knechtel is a huge award-winning director now. He did Carly Rae Jepsen, Call Me Maybe, and a bunch of other videos that have won like Junos and global everything. So basically, like, just by shooting these little shows, now I've shot a wedding here, and now Ben kind of knows about me, and he's about to go on this weird journey of like all of this, I guess, like literal rock star fame, and actually doing the thing that doesn't seem like it could potentially be a real job. And I get to kind of come along in pieces of the ride for that. So it's cool to see when your friends kind of just start exploding in a different realm other than yourself. And you can kind of follow that, and you can pull bits and pieces from what they're doing into your success, even though you're in completely non-competitive markets. It's cool to see how they market themselves. And I think anchoring yourself to somebody's like startup success, that when you are both kind of like these people scrambling to make like budget photos and videos, that when they start really accelerating, it gives you a lot of hope when you're in a place that you just don't, that you don't feel like you belong, and that you're not going to be going forward. And you see that, and that's like that little small kick that you need that one day to go, I don't know, to go out and shoot and to go have some fun. So I started taking images that I actually enjoyed. I pretty much parlayed everything that I was doing with my friends, just like walking around, shooting for myself, building my own portfolio. And I was able to bring some of that into weddings, and I was able to just kind of take, I don't know, at least like that color palette and the way that I shot weddings. And in the beginning, I very much shot weddings like I was just out there, that I was just photographing specifically like my friend's band, that rather than them being a couple, or they're also a couple, but they're also a band. And this is kind of the same way that if I found this wall, I would easily shoot this with a band, regardless of how many individuals were in it. So I kind of just started doing that. And then I had to get a little bit more professional. So I actually went to, this is kind of a gray area, and I went to a few just kind of portfolio workshops that my friend Dave and Shar, they're Toronto photographers, or they were at the time. They're out in Australia now. But at the time, they were like, hey, we're just going to get a bunch of people, put them in dresses, and you guys can come in and take photos. And in the afternoon, we'll talk a little bit about business. And I went in and I shot a lot of my favorite images, because I now stepped up from shooting people that were very much against their will to people that were now, I guess, like completely comfortable in front of a camera and knew where to look for light and everything. So basically, by hiring people that actually knew how they appeared in front of the camera, made my job a lot easier, and made me, or forced me to create better images very easily. So if you're in the position right now that you're trying to create great images and you're just like, you're not there yet, consider spending a little bit of money and actually hire some people to go out and do a shoot. And some photographers will think this is a gray area. I'm just kind of into building my portfolio as I want it to look. If in the very beginning, if I just would have sat back and let my portfolio run its course, and just whatever work came in, that would be the work that I promote, I don't know what I would be doing right now. I think I would be probably, the most amount of work that I did, I think, was for interior people that built cabinets and people that designed rooms. So I'd probably be some form of real estate photographer, which could have taken me down a unique and interesting path, but I have kind of enjoyed the path that I've been on. So yeah, that's my story. The real story is that I kind of covered a little bit of this. At the time that when I was shooting all this cool stuff, I was working for T-shirts, and I couldn't book anything at all. My issue was that I was super young, and no one wanted a photographer that had no experience and no relevant portfolio. So what I did was I went out and I just started building that portfolio as best that I possibly could. And when I look back at the time frame that it required, it was really only about a year. So it was, I would say, a year from when I decided that I want to be a wedding photographer, I want to do this thing seriously, until I was actually booking my first weddings, or we'll talk about it in a little bit, but getting some free weddings off Craigslist that are a little bit of a nightmare. It's the best case is that you're shooting weddings for people that you get along with, that also respect you as an artist. In the beginning, you kind of have to bridge this gap of just being the button pusher, and you have to kind of do what you can within that environment to get images for your portfolio personally. So you're kind of working on two levels there, that you want to deliver on client expectations, but you also want to be creating your future portfolio. So what I did was I just traded everything. So if I came out and I shot cool photos of you snowboarding, my only request would be, I don't want any money. I want to make you look awesome. I want hopefully these to end up in a magazine, or at least your MySpace profile photo. And because of that, I want to do a shoot with you and your significant other, girlfriend, or whatever it might be at the time. But we'll get to more of that later. Eventually, it all kind of came together. And again, I'm always in the process of building my own portfolio. I'm never just relaxing and being like, like everything's just fine now. That I am actively still building my portfolio, specifically in the travel space now. So everything, building process, work with your current opportunities and what you have access to. One thing that I've mentioned a few times that actually isn't really on the internet anywhere. It's, I don't even remember where I originally heard it. It's called the Rodriguez List. And Robert Rodriguez, director, shot El Mariachi film for, I think, $225. So they spent $7,000 on production of this film. And this would have been early 90s. So things still actually cost money to do. And box office, I think they got picked up at Sundance and then thrown in like proper distribution and ended up making $2 million in the box office. And it's regarded as like the smallest budget film to make the most amount of money. And what I took from this was that he was kind of speaking to his list of like how this all came together, that how did you shoot a movie for $7,000 at the time? Realistically, he could probably do it now for like $500. That all he did was he took stock of like everything that he had. So he had access to his brother that had a gas station, and this guy drove a bus, and whatever it might be, you put it all together and you just kind of make it work. So whoever you know, whoever owns a business, whatever spaces you can find yourself in that look impressive or that can really add to your portfolio, in the beginning, just like take stock of them, go out and start build your portfolio and build, I guess, the future of your life. One last thing to end on in this first section of the video is that you kind of have to embrace being new. You don't necessarily have to just like pretend. I don't like the term fake it till you make it. I think that if you're new, you can really leverage that, and you can basically rely on that now when people see your pricing and maybe you're priced a little bit lower than everyone else, that if it looks like you've been in business for 15, 20 years or whatever it might be, because you're faking it and you're coming up with all this stuff and you're building your portfolio to make it look like you're this, I don't know, photographer that's just been around for a while. If you just relax and lie into being a little bit newer than everyone else, that people will understand that and they'll be like, okay, this is why he charges this much. And in the beginning, for me specifically, my big thing was that I kind of wanted people to believe that I was this photographer that was, that they were finding this diamond in the rough, I guess, before they actually made it to what they could possibly be. And I was subtly reminding people in the first meeting that like, hey, like you're booking me now, but a year from now, I'm going to be twice as good when I'm actually shooting your wedding. So I think that is something to embrace rather than just kind of, I don't know, faking it until you make it. Yeah, that is the end of section 1. Tim, do we have any questions?
We have many questions. I screenshot them because there's a lot in there, but I'll read them out in no particular order.
No particular order. Tim is reading us the questions. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can jump in, but I mean, it'll be through here, so.
True. Okay, I'll read the
question to you.
I will state the question and the answer.
Are the Knot or Wedding Pro programs worth it for new wedding photographers?
Are the Knot or Wedding Wire or anything like that worth it for new wedding photographers? I do not think so. I've heard a lot of really sketchy stories about them, specifically in Canada. They are not good at all, and they're very hard sales. So if you are like myself and you're kind of introverted and you're afraid of saying no sometimes, you will get pushed into buying something that is out of the means of what it could possibly return. I've also heard a lot of things about just like spam inquiries coming in that they just kind of like, they drip a few in, but they'll never actually respond to you, and they'll just ghost out because they just don't exist. So those are my thoughts. I used them maybe 5 years ago, same-ish results. I would recommend spending your time and dollars into building your portfolio rather than, I don't know, spending money for advertising. And if you are going to spend money on advertising, it'll be in part 2 of this. It's going to be up in March on Patreon, and it's like just Instagram ads, Facebook ads to get in front of the right people. And the most important part is to know what content to put in front of them. So you can't just like be like, hey, here's my website, click through, here's 25 cents that you pay to Facebook to get somebody on your site. That you need to know what content will actually hook them once they're there, because otherwise it's just going to be wasted money, and there's a million wedding photographers out there.
That was a question from Scott, so thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Next question is kind of preference. I think it depends on the moment, but I'll let you answer it. It's a Wolf Street Productions. Do you prefer off-camera flash or on-camera flash for the dark reception shots?
Off-camera flash or on-camera flash for dark reception shots? It completely depends. I would prefer, in a perfect world, I prefer no flash at all. That if I can get away with shooting ambient, we're actually going to get to it next in lenses. that I prefer to shoot with an 85 prime and 85 1.4, and I can get away in most situations. What I'm looking for is not necessarily quantity of light, I'm looking for quality. So if it's very dark and I have to punch the ISO, there's a wedding on my YouTube channel that I shot, I think everything at 5000 ISO, and looking at those images, I easily, as long as I was exposing properly, could have gone up to 10,000 ISO. And this is of course like using a newer-ish camera, not necessarily, it doesn't have to have come out this year, but really anything that's come out in the past couple of years is good. So if I can get away with good quality of light, I am usually doing that. If there's like under eye bags and just because of like pot lights or whatever it might be, at that point is when I'll switch to usually on camera flash first, or if I just look at a scene and I'm like, there's no way that on camera can actually take care of this, that I will at that point go to off camera flash. So over time you learn which rooms are just basically need what, and you don't have to problem solve. I would say that's a big thing for photography in general, is that when I used to leave a wedding at the end of the day, I would be completely drained because I just had to problem solve every single thing. And once you solve those problems, you get to carry that information forward to the next time. So you're able to just not problem solve and you can just keep working, I don't know, and not really think about it. So ambient preferred, I would say 80% of venues I'm shooting ambient. Maybe 10% I'm shooting on camera flash, and it's just a Godox V1. And then off camera flash is also my Godox V1. And I will use that off camera basically if I'm in a big room and the head table's right there and I can't get this close because there's like 25 tables that'll be blocking. At that point, I'll set a little off camera up here, and then I'll go on a 7200 and stand at the back of the room and zoom in. So yeah.
Great. That was
cool.
Wolf Street Productions.
Thank you, Wolf Street Productions.
They have a second question.
Second question.
Do you recommend offering prints for weddings? If so, do I look for a third party to do it?
So prints for weddings, I like obviously printing your work is important. I try to coach my couples specifically to print their own work. And this even includes albums. That there's a few videos on my YouTube channel that I really just didn't enjoy shooting albums, that I would basically, like after a full wedding season, I shoot a lot. I shoot 60, I think I did 67, 68 weddings last year. And to shoot that much, and then to finally November hits and you're like, cool, I'm gonna have a week off. I can relax, get everything that I need to out. And at that point, I would just get hit with album orders, and so many album orders would come in that they would stress me out, and then they would all want them before Christmas. And it was very hard to get people to get back to me in a timely manner. And it was just really the sad part of my season. So now I just coach my couples on how to print their own stuff and how to do that. I think it's critically important. I use a third party for when I actually do albums. I either use a Fineo 1, which is the very expensive leather-bound book, or I use the Playbook, which is, I would say, somewhat equal in quality, but a lot smaller and a lot less money. So Fineo Playbook is awesome. Fineo 1 is awesome for display books, and we'll talk about that more in the Patreon section that's going to be out in March. But basically just like printing display albums for every single venue that you've ever shot at, that it's worth the $400 investment to build that beautiful album, to put that in front of people at the I don't know, at the venue when they're there ready to book their wedding.
Yeah.
All right.
Great answer. Great.
Back to Tim.
One more question, or two more questions we had that I think popped up, which make the most sense.
Yep.
Being a wedding photographer, this is from Liv. Being a wedding photographer is a big responsibility. Tips on how to defeat anxiety and just dive into the business.
So tips on how to defeat anxiety when it comes to wedding photography. Wedding photography is a little bit scary, and you will get that adrenaline boost for the first probably, I don't know, like 10, 15 weddings that you shoot. And you'll get the same adrenaline boost once that wears off. Start flying a drone and you'll get that adrenaline boost back again for another 15, 20 flights. Or when you're trying to do something stupid like we did in Iceland, where Blair tried to thread the needle through a mountain top and we lost the drone. But I would say, what was the question? I derailed myself with the...
You're asking about anxiety. How you
anxiety.
Anxiety around a wedding?
So anxiety, I think it's just important to over prepare. That if you can come up with a full, I don't know, at least a breakdown, even if you don't reference it throughout the entire day, if you have a shot list just for yourself, or even the easier route is on your phone, in your pocket, just have a bunch of poses that if you're running out of poses or whatever, with your couple, like that you can just go back to it. So I feel like that relieved a lot of my anxiety on the actual wedding day. And then beyond that, knowing that one, I'm shooting raw, and two, that everything is backed up to 2 cards while I'm shooting, also helps me relax a lot, that I know when I'm shooting that even if it's not looking exactly like I'd put it on my website right at the back of the camera, that I know that if I spend a little bit more time with it in post-production, that I can get it there. Most ideal is to obviously shoot a correcting camera, but in the beginning, it's like there's a lot going on and you just kind of have to make do and just get it done. So I relied a little bit on that, as well as offsite backups and multiple backups on drives as well. If you can't tell, I go over the top with a lot of backups. I don't do this anymore because you can actually, Wi-Fi exists, but if I'm shooting a destination wedding, I actually used to either burn everything to a DVD or put it on a USB thumb drive and FedEx it home, so that even if all of my gear got stolen, that in the mail would be all the images. So that's something that released my anxiety a little bit, and knowing that, that I have a list of things that I need to do and that I can kind of fix any problems that I need to. It will just take me longer in post-production. I think that's how I kind of calmed my initial anxiety. All right, we got another question?
From Stacy Jordan.
Last question, Stacy Jordan.
Yeah. This goes back to flash, but do you recommend any flash diffusers?
Oh, flash diffusers. So I have nothing with me right now, but if you, I'm gonna guess in the off-camera flash, I have a few off-camera flash videos. I use a big Octobox that's over here, which is awesome if you're in a studio environment, and it works really well, but it's a pain to set up and it's kind of annoying and really cumbersome on a wedding day. On a wedding day, usually what I'm looking for, and this is what the off-camera flash video and specifically the off-camera flash course that's on Patreon right now goes into, is really just using the environment that you're in to create great and softer light just by bouncing, rather than bringing in modifiers that maybe you have to put a little more power into it. But a flash like the Godox V1 has more than enough power to really just overpower any situation that you need. So if I walked into this room, obviously this is a nice case example, but if I was bouncing my flash off of here, that I'd be able to light up anything that I want. And again, paying attention to the three-dimensionality and just kind of the quality of the light overall. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
What did I answer? I'm losing it.
Use the quality of the light you have, but are there any other specific diffusers you would recommend?
Other specific diffusers I just like the little, just Stoffen Cup diffusers. I think they do good enough. They're just the little ball that just goes on top of your flash. Or in Stoffen Cup example, it's kind of just a little square that goes over top of your speed light. And then for something that's a round flash head like the Godox V1, at that point it becomes like a little almost snow globe. And basically all that does is it just helps get light more places and makes your beam a little bit wider. But I think that bouncing is kind of the way to go, that I rarely, if ever, use direct flash. So yeah, just find and figure out how to bounce things and just go out with friends, or bring somebody over to your house or your studio that you would find yourself in on a wedding day. I think just like using a normal house is kind of the best way to go about this, because that's usually the time that I find myself in the most difficult situation, that I have to come in and I have to overpower like bad pot lights, and there's like a makeup artist light over here, and there's like all kinds of stuff going on. In those situations, in those circumstances, is kind of easy to find, because you just go into any house really, or any hotel room, and try to figure it out. All right, cool.
The rest are just saying that they love you. People love you, Taylor.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. So we're on to part 2. Basically, if you weren't here at the beginning, how this is going to work. I'm doing 7 videos here on YouTube. If you're watching the live stream right now, you're going to get through all of them. And then we're going to do a re-release from the actual cameras that we have up here recording. These are the videos that are going to be coming out. Hopefully you can read that over, I guess, the rest of the video here. And in the future, we're going to have a few Patreon videos, getting 10K followers on Instagram, how to get published and why it's important to get published, pricing for wedding photographers, hybrid coverage and why it's important, making more money, becoming a preferred vendor, and what I've learned in over this year.
It's not like Saturday.
All right, that's fair. All right, technical Tim back here. And yeah, Instagram ads, Facebook ads, and what we've all kind of been doing wrong for a long period of time.